course. As I mentioned before, you may be sitting there thinking, why are we doing this Marketing 101 SWOT analysis? Well, we do it for various reasons. The thing I like about the SWOT is I kind of see it almost as a situation analysis of a marketing plan for extremely busy people that do not have the time or inclination to get on with a marketing plan. What the SWOT does is it gives you a really quick overview of what's happening within your business and also what's happening around your business. So looking at the, I guess, broad external environment. So not only looking inside the business, but at factors outside the business that are completely outside of your control, but you may have to plan for. So the other reason we do it is that what we find when we get into the nitty-gritty is that people kind of struggle with what to put in each square. So we're going to go through that now and show you very, very quickly. So this is a really quick session, this one, how you can sort of get a picture of what's happening within your business and around the business in a really quick session. So I think previously we've gone through this in 15-20 minutes. So it's a really nice and quick session because we like to make this simple. So what the SWOT's all about, at its very basic form, it's a brainstorming tool, and it's something that you can all get in your room, get in a meeting room and use it for strategic planning. So it's an easy and quick way to really get to understand what's happening in your business, to understand your business better, having a look and think about some of those weaknesses, looking at some of the threats, as I mentioned before, some of the things that are around you but you have no control over. Looking at those opportunities, we're seeing them all the time, and of course the strengths. And from these, it really does help you get a clear focus of developing your business goals and strategies for achieving them. So as I mentioned before, if you don't have the time to go through and do a big sort of marketing plan, at the very least, we ask a destination or a business to go through the SWOT analysis, because sometimes you just need to sit there and look at your business over a couple of hours, and literally it can be a couple of hours or even an hour for you to sort of go, oh, wow, okay, I better do something about this. And put, I guess, opportunities and issues on the radar. So short and simple. We like to keep it as a, almost a one-pager. But you almost always need to include the details behind the scenes. So, for example, if you're thinking your staff are a strength, include specific details as why. So they might be, fabulous at service skills. They might have great experience in digital marketing. They may bring something to your organisation that is really, really valuable. So you need to put that down as an internal strength.
I can share an example there, Bron, which is having judged tourism awards, when you get visitor centres and everyone talks about their wonderful, friendly volunteers. Well, here's a clue. Absolutely, the vast majority of visitor centres have lovely, friendly volunteers. How are your lovely, friendly volunteers different? What's the particular skill set that they have? So we saw one where we had a very multilingual group of volunteers, so that's a clear strength. Not only were they friendly and willing to help, but they were actually able to help people in about, I think, on an average day, they might have had 4 different languages represented other than English represented in the visitor centre. So that's clearly a strength that you'd need to bring out here.
Yep, that's fantastic. Yeah, so just, specifying why that's a strength. So again, what you need to do is once you've done your big brainstorming list, prioritise the results in order. And this is something that Carolyn and I tend to do on our own strategy session days. We've got one coming up in November, so we will go through this process with our own business as well. Really, really important, ask for input from your employees, customers, and your business partners, for example. Employees and frontline staff are really, really important, and they get ignored a lot. And this is something that I learned in my many, many years at Qantas. These guys are at the front line. They hear what's going on. They know what's going on with customers. They know what's going on with the business, what people are saying about them. So, if you're sitting in the marketing department in an ivory tower, and talking about these things in a meeting room without checking in with your frontline staff, you've really got a massive problem and a disconnect there that could see you in hot water very soon down the track. So you really need to somehow involve them, and you can do that in various different ways with staff surveys. If you can't be bothered doing that or don't have the time to do that, you can simply just get out on the floor and start asking people and say you're going through this process. So just, again, just the old-fashioned way, just go down, talk to your staff for the day and scoot around and just say, what's happening, what are you hearing lately? They are often the best source of information and ideas for your business. So having a look at your competitors, really important. So what we tend to ask you to do in the strategic situation analysis is almost, if you can, do a SWOT analysis for your competitors. So what are they doing really well? What are their weaknesses? What are their threats? So this is one of our favourite ones here. We work with a lot of coastal destinations here in Australia. And everyone says that their beach is amazing and stunning and beautiful. Well, we're here to tell you there's 11,000 stunning beaches in Australia. So why should I go to your beach and not the others? So you really have to break it down and really pick it apart. So Carolyn, did you want to add to anything to that? That's one of your favourite sayings.
No, I think it is that point, and it goes back to the thing I touched on the previous page with the visitor centre, which is you do have to be really realistic, because again the SWOT analysis is almost always comparative. It's not just what you're good at, it's what other people are good at too. So as Bron said, that actually is a great tip to go and do that thing where you actually think yourself into the shoes of your competitor. Try it also with the lens of a customer on, to look at your business. What would a customer say about you? So, it really is, it's about being very realistic about what you've got to offer and what is right and wrong. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be proud of what you've got. Interestingly, we're working with a destination at the moment where people are almost a bit like, oh, well, they're not sure that the things they love people would appreciate about their business, their region, but definitely that's something that we see. So, do think about that. And an example we like to use there is, you can look at somewhere like Bondi, or you can look at somewhere like Airlie Beach. They're both stunning beaches in different ways. I mean, Bondi is it's an iconic Australian experience. It's 25 minutes from the city, so you can have your cake and eat it. That's the story there. Airlie Beach is just that sublime beauty, that amazing white sand, that mental image everyone has in their mind. So that's how you can see how you might tease those differences apart and look at that.
Yeah, and this is a really important part, I guess. I think we've got a few of our national parks friends here. I guess sitting down and looking at the competitive advantage for each park. What makes them different from the one up the road or the one sort of further down the state? How is it different? How's the experience different? Is one good for families? Is one good for hardcore trekkers? Is one got accessibility pathways that are really good for people that find it, difficult to walk. So there's lots of different physical and I guess emotional ways that you can differentiate. So just don't think of the physical, think of the kind of intangible aspects that you can differentiate as well. So that's kind of what's happening there. So when it comes to strengths, so if you think of that square, which we do have a square for you in a couple of slides, when you think about the strengths of your organisations, you need to look at the internal strengths of the organisations. So as we mentioned previously, what's strong about your business? And we mentioned the staff. We could also talk about the product development opportunities that we've gone through in the past. So what things have you done, or what strengths do you have that can really you can maintain them so that you don't lose a competitive advantage in the market? So these are yours uniquely. Were you going to say something there, Carolyn?
No.
a court or something. So this is something, think about things that really no one can take these away from you and your business. There's something that you own. There's something internal to you. You have full control over these strengths. And a similar story for the internal weaknesses. Again, your weaknesses, you do have full control over these. So, what are some things that are going to hinder sales? Things that you have control to change if you want to change them. So, thinking about, things like your marketing efforts, your online presence, these types of things. What are people saying about you in reviews, for example? You do get a lot of information from the review sites. So, weaknesses that are going to put your business at a disadvantage to others, but also these are things that you can change. You've got the power to change here. Opportunities and threats. Now, just moving on from what I mentioned in the beginning, these are external to your organisation or your product or service that will improve your sales. So it's about seizing whatever's going on around you. So, opportunities created by external factors such as new consumer trends. So we've got changes in the market. So, for example, we're seeing a surge in seniors touring the world at the moment. It's phenomenal. So how are you going to capture the seniors market? How are you going to talk to them? For example, we see changes in legislation sometimes that are happening that can be an opportunity and or a threat as well. There's a whole range of things happening outside of your control that will impact your business. So the same goes for threats. So again, we have no control over these, but we have to get our business or destination ready to face these threats. We have to kind of come up with a plan on how to react to them. So you might, you might be coming into bushfire season. Have you had a lot of bushfires in the past? How are you going to manage public perception? I mean, we see, for example, here in Sydney, the Blue Mountains, it was a big problem. Actually, we're coming into bushfire season now. They were desperate for people to come to the Blue Mountains to try and inject some income into the local economy. But people in Sydney didn't want to step on any toes or offend people in the Blue Mountains by going up there. They thought it was just going to be all black trees and doom and gloom. So how are you going to prepare for that if and when it happens? There might be changes to the markets. There's new competitors, new marketing campaigns that are going to take market share from you. New government policy that just, will just come around the corner and kind of come out from nowhere and impact your business. And we see a lot of this stuff going on. One of the things, an example that we've seen recently, both Carolyn and I were at a conference. What was the beach called, Carolyn, when we went to the LGA conference? And I just said,
it was just outside Taree. Just outside Taree.
It's the first time that I've kind of gone to a place and gone, this is global warming in action. This is climate change. This is happening in my face right now. So it was a resort built in a beautiful, what would have been a beautiful, idyllic location, but just the erosion of the beach was becoming more and more. With every storm, they lost a big chunk of the beach. So what are they going to do? This is going to impact that business. Sorry, go on.
And we've seen another example on Sydney's northern beaches where DY had the storm surges caused them to lose their beach, and they're now shipping in sand from overseas to replace that beach. So where's the authenticity of your destination, and how are you communicating with people around that kind of stuff, particularly locals who are going to be very sensitive to those kind of things? So definitely we do see those external threats can be those big macro things as well as what your competitors are up to doing. So
yep. Are we actually going to address some of this stuff in the conference, in the Tourism Rockstar Convention? We're going to look at planning for some of these things. Are you planning for thinking about 5, 10, 25, even 100 years' time? What's happening? It's a concept of cathedral thinking. But it was really interesting. There were houses that actually went into the ocean, you know, people's swimming pools. And they all sat there going, yeah, we thought this would happen one day, but when you see it happening, they were just kind of still in shock. So how are we going to plan for these things as an industry? I know it's strange, isn't it? Carolyn's laughing.
Well, I'm laughing because it's a very human trait. Even though we know bad things will happen, somehow we believe we're immune to them. It's a very well-known psychological trait. I'm not laughing at those poor people who lost their swimming pool. I'm laughing at our what we would call the optimism bias of human beings.
Yes, yes, it happens to everybody else but me. So what we've put here is an internal, well, we've done a SWOT for you, and this is the last slide, just with some examples of what you could put on your SWOT analysis. And an example to put in front of a room, you know, if you wanted to run this as an exercise in 1 or 2 hours, again, it can be really quick, really top of mind. So strengths could be, you know, high repeat visitation, and this is internal because you have control over those people that are coming back. As mentioned, online reputation, so looking at TripAdvisor, Google, great location. So I guess where we stayed would have been a fabulous location at one point in time, but now I guess that's actually a threat, isn't it? That's not a strength. You could have a great database, so you could have a really excellent database of people that you can communicate with. So
a great example of that, Bron, is the airlines with their frequent flyer programs. I mean, we now have a situation where Qantas's frequent flyer program and the modelling and data it has is actually worth more than the rest of the airline, including all those whopping great big planes. So don't underestimate things like information really is strength and power.
Yes, yes. Again, so it doesn't have to be a tangible sort of thing. So weaknesses, struggling to differentiate that product or that destination. So again, going back to the 11,000 beaches that we have in Australia that are really beautiful. We hear this one all the time. I struggle for time with marketing. With this one, we say we dish out the tough love. You know, without marketing, you don't have sales. And this forms into cash flow problems and a whole range of things. Again, we hear high staff turnover within the travel industry. You know, at some point you might have to look at what's happening within your company, not necessarily hearing the same old argument about, you know, people leave, it's a short-term career, it's not a career. We hear all sorts of arguments, but, you know, there are some businesses being run with, you know, fabulous long-term staff who choose to stay there. Information overload, you know, people just go, where do I start? And again, we're still seeing old websites with little traffic, old websites in the travel industry that are just not mobile. Again, we see this often. So looking at your external environment, the opportunities, you could look at referral programs, as we mentioned before, seniors and accessible, local experiences, so things that are happening not at just your place, but, you know, around you as well. Soft adventure tourism opportunities. Again, these are just examples that we picked out. Threats, the sharing economy. We see hotels think of this as a threat. The sharing economy is actually just happening anyway, so how are they planning for that? We see a lot of, well, a few of the top hotel chains actually coming up with apartment-style accommodation. That one we stayed in New York, Carolyn, did you think that brand was an attempt, was it Hyatt? It was Hyatt, wasn't it? An attempt at tackling the sharing economy? You there? Hello?
I'd muted myself. Yes, sorry. I think it was because there was some background noise here, so but it's gone away now. So basically, yes, I think it's specifically Hyatt. They haven't said it's about the sharing economy, but what they've said is they're seeing a trend towards long-term stays in some of their large cities, which I think we can decode as Airbnb growth, and
Yes.
they've designed a product specifically intended to meet that. So it's all sort of small service departments, not quite as large as you know, traditional full service departments, a little bit smaller than that, but very much designed to be in great neighborhoods and sitting in that space. So I would say definitely one of the things that they were thinking about when they launched that product was the sharing economy.
Definitely. And you know, having a look around that room, it wasn't, I don't think it was any bigger than just a normal hotel room. They just had
No.
configured it with a really tiny bedroom and a little sort of separate lounge room with a small kitchen. So
that was New York though, so
that was New York, and we were pretty happy with that.
Yep.
Yeah, looking at sort of, I think a threat that we don't consider often is a fragmented local tourism industry. Again, you know, we see a lot of, I guess, destinations working against themselves, and instead of businesses coming together or regions just coming together and working together and to market themselves as a destination, we see them fighting each other. Um, we see them fighting, seeing the hotel at the end of the street as a competitor. We see, you know, restaurants thinking that the hotel restaurant is a competitor. We don't see enough of people working together in our industry. It's a big problem, and fragmentation, you know, means it's a threat. So I guess from this perspective, if you're a region and you've got an industry that's fragmented, that makes things very, very hard. And that's pretty well it. It's, as I mentioned, it's an easy one today. Easy to go through. So do we have any questions at all? Carolyn, do we have questions?
No one's raised their hand at the moment, Bron, but what we do tend to find is people do need a little sort of 3 or 5 minutes of thinking time.
Yes. Well, in
And
that time, what I'm going to do, if people want to think about a question, or just, you know, if you just want to ask us anything about your marketing planning, it doesn't have to be this topic. If you've got anything, we can just unmute you and you can throw in a question or you can write a question. But at this point in time, I want to ask everybody here, are you coming to the Tourism Rockstar Convention in Bondi? So there's a couple of names here I haven't heard from. So I might shoot you an email after this just to double check. I think, what have we got here? National Parks, Queensland, you guys would benefit from this big time.
I guess it's the challenge of travel though, Bron, for some of our,
I know,
you know, interstate listeners. They've got to add that on to the cost. Although it's still better than every time I see a great conference at the Market Research Society in Europe or the TTRA in the States, I'm always sitting there going, yeah, and then I have kind of triple or quadruple the cost. But I think it is going to be a great day. We had fabulous feedback. I mean, it feels a bit awkward blowing our own trumpet here, but we had fabulous feedback. Actually, I'm going to stop the recording now, Bron, because then people can open their questions. So